The massive holographic display flickered to life in the center of the Galactic Empire's Supreme Council chamber. Every seat was filled with representatives from the most powerful species in known space. The Vorthakians, with their blue-scaled skin and 4 arms, sat in the highest positions. The insect-like Klendri clicked their mandibles nervously in the middle rows. Even the energy beings from the Zephyr systems had manifested their glowing forms for this emergency session. Admiral Juwan's face appeared on the display, her dark eyes scanning the assembled aliens with cold determination. She wore the simple black uniform of the Human Defense Fleet, a force that most of the galaxy considered nothing more than primitives playing soldier in their single-star system. The background behind her showed the bridge of a human vessel, all clean lines and efficient design that looked almost primitive compared to the ornate ships of the Empire. "Greetings, Supreme Council of the Galactic Empire," Juwan said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "I am Admiral Juwan of the Sol Defense Fleet, speaking on behalf of humanity and our homeworld Earth." A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Chancellor Vorthak, the massive, blue-scaled leader of the Empire, leaned forward in his throne with what might have been a smile on his alien features. His 4 arms gestured dismissively as he prepared to speak, but Juwan continued without pause. "For 50 years we have watched your empire expand across the galaxy. We have seen you consume the peaceful worlds of the Catherians and turn their children into living batteries for your machines. We have witnessed you grind the crystal-based Zephyrians into building materials for your palaces. We have observed you enslave entire species and strip their worlds bare for resources." The amusement in the chamber began to fade. Several representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The Empire's expansion had been brutal, but it was also profitable for those who served it willingly. "During this time," Juwan continued, "humanity has remained in our single-star system. We have not expanded, we have not conquered, we have not interfered, but we have been watching, we have been learning, and we have been preparing." Captain Minho stepped into view behind the Admiral, carrying a datapad that glowed with information. He was younger than G1, but his eyes held the same cold determination. His uniform bore the insignia of the Reconnaissance Division, though none of the aliens in the chamber knew what that symbol meant. "Our reconnaissance forces have mapped every one of your worlds," Jawan said as Minho handed her the datapad. "We know the location of every fleet, every resource depot, every research facility. We understand your technology, your tactics, and your weaknesses. Most importantly, we know about the suffering you cause." Chancellor Vorthak finally found his voice. "You dare threaten the Galactic Empire?" His words boomed through the chamber, translated into dozens of languages simultaneously. "You are nothing but a single-system species that has never ventured beyond your own solar system. What could you possibly do to challenge a 1,000-world empire?" Kidwan's expression did not change. "We are delivering a final warning, not a threat. The difference is important." She touched the datapad and the display split into multiple screens showing various Imperial worlds. Each screen showed detailed intelligence that should have been impossible for an isolated species to obtain. Fleet movements, resource shipments, even private communications between Imperial commanders flowed across the displays. "You will cease all expansion immediately," Juwan stated. "You will release all enslaved species and return them to their homeworlds with full autonomy. You will dismantle your resource extraction operations on occupied worlds and allow natural recovery. You have 1 galactic standard year to comply with these terms." The chamber erupted in disbelief and anger. Representatives shouted in their various languages, while others activated their own communication devices to contact their home governments. Chancellor Vorthak slammed all 4 of his fists on his throne's armrests, his blue scales darkening with rage. "And if we refuse?" Vorthak roared over the noise. The chaos in the chamber suddenly stopped as every being present felt something they had not experienced in centuries of galactic dominance, a chill of genuine fear. Jiwan's smile was small and cold, barely visible on her human features, but it carried more menace than any alien war cry. Then we will demonstrate why humanity has spent 50 years preparing instead of expanding, she said quietly. We will show you what happens when a species that has been watching and learning decides to stop hiding. The display behind G1 changed to show the Sol system, but not as the Empire's intelligence services had always seen it. Instead of a single inhabited world with primitive spacefaring technology, the screens revealed massive orbital installations, shipyards that dwarfed anything in Imperial space, and weapons platforms that ringed every planet and moon in the system. You have spent centuries building your empire by consuming weaker species, Jiwan continued. We have spent decades building something different. We have created a civilization that does not expand by conquest but by perfection. Every technology you have stolen, we have improved. Every tactic you have used, we have mastered. Every weakness you have shown, we have noted. Captain Minho stepped forward again, this time carrying a different device. As he activated it, the display showed detailed schematics of Imperial vessels, but with modifications that made them far more efficient and deadly than their original designs. We know about your energy shields because we developed better ones, Jawan said. We understand your faster-than-light travel because we can do it without the massive engines you require. We have studied your weapons because we built ones that make yours look like children's toys. The representatives in the chamber began to understand that this was not the boastful threat of a primitive species. The technical data flowing across the displays was too detailed, too advanced, too accurate to be anything but genuine intelligence gathered over decades of patient observation. But technology is not our greatest advantage, Jawan continued. Our greatest advantage is that we understand what you refuse to learn. Strength without purpose is just destruction. Power without responsibility is just tyranny. An empire built on conquest will always fall to something stronger. She paused, letting her words sink in throughout the chamber. When she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. We are that something stronger. Not because we have better weapons or faster ships, though we do. Not because we have more resources or larger fleets, though we will. We are stronger because we fight for something greater than ourselves. Every species you have enslaved, every world you have consumed, every life you have destroyed has taught us what we must become to stop you. Chancellor Vorthak leaned back in his throne, his forearms trembling slightly. You cannot defeat an empire that spans 1,000 worlds with forces from a single system. You are correct, Jawan agreed. We cannot defeat your empire. Her smile grew slightly wider. We can only devour it completely. The transmission began to fade, but Jawan's final words carried clearly through every translation system in the chamber. You have 1 year to prove that the Galactic Empire can change. 1 year to show that you can become something better than a cancer that consumes everything it touches. Use that time wisely, because when it ends, there will be no empire left. To rule, there will only be us, and what we choose to build from what remains of your civilization. The display went dark, leaving the Supreme Council chamber in stunned silence. For the first time in centuries, the leaders of the Galactic Empire sat in their seats and truly understood fear. Commander Dayan stood in the center of the observatory, a massive spherical chamber buried deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon. Thousands of holographic displays floated around her, each one showing a different part of the galaxy. Her fingers moved through the air, pulling up reports from surveillance probes that had been silently watching the Empire for decades. Status report from Sector 7, called out Lieutenant Bora from her station near the curved wall. The Imperial fleet just finished consuming the Altarian system. Population of 12 billion reduced to 0 in 6 days. Dayan nodded grimly. As she opened the detailed files, the Altarians had been a peaceful species, their technology focused on art and philosophy rather than weapons. They had tried to surrender when the Imperial fleet arrived, offering their knowledge and resources. Freely, the Empire had taken everything anyway, then harvested the population for biological research. Add it to the priority list, Dayan said. When we reach that sector, the Altarian archives will be restored. Dr. Young-Soo looked up from his research station where dozens of alien specimens floated in containment fields. Each one had been carefully studied and catalogued over the years. Commander, I have the psychological profile updates on the Vorthakian leadership structure. Their weakness is still pride, but it runs deeper than we thought. The doctor moved to a larger display that showed detailed brain scans and behavioral analysis. They literally cannot imagine being defeated by what they consider a lower species. This blindness has only gotten worse as their empire expanded. They will not take our warning seriously until we prove our strength. Diane walked over to examine the data. The Human Intelligence Network had been gathering information on every major imperial species for 50 years. They knew how each alien race thought, what motivated them, what frightened them. This knowledge would be crucial in the coming war. What about the enslaved species? She asked. How will they react when the fighting starts? Dr. Young-Soo pulled up another set of files. Mixed responses. The Catherians have been enslaved so long that many no longer remember freedom. They will need careful handling. The Zephyrians still have strong cultural memories of independence, but they have been physically altered by imperial experiments. The crystal-based species will support us if we can prove we can actually win. 3 months had passed since Admiral Ji-won delivered humanity's ultimatum to the Supreme Council. The Empire's response had been exactly what the humans expected. Instead of considering the warning, they had accelerated their expansion. 3 more star systems had fallen in the past weeks alone. Incoming transmission from Probe Network Alpha, announced Sergeant Hyun-woo from the communications station. The Empire just deployed a new battle fleet to the Centaur border. Size estimate is 2,000 ships. Dayan opened the tactical display. The new Imperial fleet was indeed massive, but human intelligence had been tracking its construction for over a year. Every ship design, every weapon system, every tactical doctrine was already known and countered. Dr. Young-Soo, do we have psychological profiles on the fleet commanders? She asked. Admiral Corthex and Admiral Zelani, the doctor replied immediately. Corthex is aggressive but predictable. Always attacks in the same pattern. Zelani is more creative but has a weakness for dramatic gestures that leave her ships exposed. This was the advantage that 50 years of patient watching had given humanity. While the Empire saw them as primitive isolationists, human agents had been everywhere. Not as spies in the traditional sense, but as observers. Automated probes smaller than insects. Quantum sensors that could monitor communications from light years away. Even androids that looked exactly like various alien species, walking among Imperial citizens and gathering intelligence. Commander, called out Captain Ji-hoon as he entered the observatory. General Hyman requests your presence in War Room 3. We have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. Dayan handed control of the observatory to her deputy and followed. Ji-hoon through the corridors carved from lunar rock. The Human Command Center was a marvel of efficiency, connecting dozens of underground facilities across Earth's solar system. Every asteroid belt mining station, every orbital platform, every hidden base was part of the network. War Room 3 contained a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy that showed real-time positions of every known Imperial fleet and installation. General Hyman stood before the display with several other senior officers, her expression serious. The Empire just hit the Catherian nursery worlds, she said without preamble. They are taking the children for neural fluid extraction. Current estimates suggest they will harvest over 50 million young Catherians within the week. The room fell silent. Everyone present had read the reports about Imperial harvesting operations, but this was larger than anything they had done. Before, the neural fluid from young Catherians was used to enhance Imperial communication networks, allowing their fleets to coordinate across vast distances. Status of our preparation timeline? General Hyman asked. Colonel Yemen stepped forward with a data tablet. Fleet construction is at 95% completion. All major weapon systems are online and tested. Personnel training is finished. We could begin operations within 72 hours if necessary. Intelligence networks? The general asked, looking at Dayan. Full surveillance coverage of all target systems. We have detailed plans for the first 50 Imperial worlds we intend to capture. Psychological warfare protocols are ready for deployment to enslaved populations. Dan reported. General Hyman studied the galactic map for a long moment. The original plan had been to wait the full year, allowing the Empire one final chance to change its ways. But the massive harvesting operation changed the calculation. Every day they waited meant more innocent deaths. Dr. Youngsu, she said. To the xenobiologist, in your professional opinion, is there any chance the Empire will respond positively to our ultimatum? The doctor shook his head sadly. No, General. Their entire civilization is built on the concept of species hierarchy. They believe they are naturally superior to all other life forms. Changing that belief would require dismantling everything they are. The general nodded. Then we proceed to Operation Devourer. Commander Dayan begins psychological preparation of the enslaved populations. Let them know that liberation is coming. What about the warning period? Asked Captain Jehun. We promised them a full year. General Hyman's expression hardened. They have broken their side of any possible agreement by accelerating their atrocities. The Catherian children being harvested right now deserve better than our patience with genocidal monsters. She turned to address the entire room. Gentlemen, ladies, we are about to begin the final phase of a project that has taken humanity 50 years to complete. Everything we have built, everything we have planned, everything we have sacrificed has led to this moment. The galactic map zoomed in to show the first target, Nexus Prime, the Empire's regional capital in the border sectors. It was heavily defended, but human intelligence knew every detail of its defenses. We do not fight to conquer, General Hyman continued. We fight to absorb. Every Imperial world we take will become stronger under human guidance. Every enslaved species we free will add their knowledge and abilities to our growing civilization. We are not building a new empire. We are building something that has never existed before. Dan looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues. These were people who had spent their entire careers preparing for this moment. Scientists, soldiers, intelligence officers, and planners who had devoted their lives to understanding an enemy that thought humanity was beneath notice. The Empire believes they are the apex predators of the galaxy, General Hyman said. They are about to learn what it means to be prey. Captain Seung-ho watched the tactical display from the bridge of the HSS Retribution as his fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Nexus Prime system. Around him, 50 human vessels materialized from hyperspace in perfect formation. To any observer, they looked like standard warships, sleek and efficient, but nothing that would threaten a major Imperial stronghold. Enemy response incoming, reported Lieutenant Nari from the communications station. Imperial Fleet Command is demanding identification and immediate withdrawal from Imperial space. Seung-ho smiled grimly. Send our response. Tell them we are the promised consequences of their actions. The Nexus Prime system was the Empire's regional capital for the entire border sector. Massive orbital stations surrounded the main planet, each one bristling with weapons and shielded by energy barriers that had never been breached. The Imperial fleet stationed here numbered over 300 vessels, including 2 of their massive Dreadnought-class ships that could destroy entire moons. Admiral Kelvin, the Vorthakian commander of Nexus Prime's defenses, appeared on the human fleet's communication screen. His blue-scaled face showed a mixture of amusement and irritation as he looked at what he considered a pathetic human force. Turn around and leave immediately, Kelvin commanded in his booming voice. Your primitive ships are no match for Imperial forces. We will destroy you if you advance further. Admiral Kelvin, Seung-ho replied calmly. We have studied your tactical preferences for 15 years. You favor a direct frontal assault with overwhelming force. Your ships always form the same attack pattern. Your shield frequencies follow a predictable rotation cycle. We know everything about how you fight. The alien admiral's forearms gestured. Angrily, knowledge means nothing without the power to use it. You have 50 ships against 300. Your defeat is certain. Numbers are not everything, Sung-ho said. Begin the demonstration. The human fleet suddenly vanished from all Imperial sensors. Admiral Kelvin stared at his tactical display in confusion as 300 enemy ships simply disappeared from existence. His communications officers frantically tried to re-establish contact, while his weapons officers searched for any trace of the human vessels. Impossible, Kelvin muttered. No ship can completely disappear from our sensors. His answer came when the human fleet rematerialized inside the Imperial defensive perimeter, having somehow passed through the massive energy shields as if they did not exist. But these were not the same ships that had vanished moments before. The human vessels had transformed, their hulls now gleaming with energy patterns that hurt to look at directly. Stealth technology based on Imperial quantum research. Sung-ho explained over the communication channel that was somehow still active despite all Imperial attempts to cut it. We improved on your own designs and added a few innovations of our own. The Imperial fleet opened fire with enough energy to melt a planet. Thousands of weapon beams converged on the human ships, but instead of being destroyed, the human vessels absorbed the energy and grew brighter. Their hulls pulsed with captured power that was somehow being converted into something else. Adaptive shielding, Sung-ho continued his explanation. Every weapon you fire at us makes us stronger. We learned this technique from studying how you harvest energy from conquered species. Admiral Kelvin watched in growing horror as his most powerful weapons proved useless against the human fleet. All ships ramming speed destroy them through direct collision. The Imperial vessels charged forward, but the human ships moved with impossible grace. They flowed around the attacking fleet like water, never where the Imperial weapons aimed, always in the perfect position to strike back. Their return fire was precise and devastating, each shot disabling rather than destroying. Imperial vessels? We are not here to slaughter your crews, Sung-ho said as Imperial ships began to drift helplessly with their engines and weapons offline. We are here to show you what happens when humanity stops hiding its capabilities. Colonel Suyang led the ground assault on Nexus Prime itself. Her forces materialized directly inside the planet's main defense complex, having been transported through the same technology that allowed the ships to phase through energy shields. The Imperial guards fired their weapons at the human soldiers, but the humans wore armor that adapted to each attack. The powered exoskeletons that the human soldiers wore were marvels of engineering that made them faster and stronger than any alien species. But more importantly, the armor's intelligence systems analyzed every enemy weapon and immediately developed countermeasures. After the first few minutes of fighting, Imperial weapons became completely ineffective. Surrender and you will be treated. Well, Suyang announced through loudspeakers as her forces systematically disabled the planetary defenses. Resist and you will be defeated anyway, but with more damage to your facilities. The battle for Nexus Prime lasted exactly 4 hours. When it ended, the Empire's strongest border fortress had fallen without a single human casualty. But the real shock came afterward, when the humans began their true work. Instead of occupying the world like traditional conquerors, human engineering teams immediately began studying every piece of Imperial technology. They dismantled weapon systems, analyzed computer networks, and absorbed databases containing centuries of Imperial research and development. Dr. Chanwu led the technical absorption teams as they worked their way through the orbital stations. This plasma cannon design is inefficient, he reported to Sung-ho. We can improve the energy output by 30% with simple modifications to the focusing array. Within hours, human engineers were rebuilding Imperial weapons using superior techniques. The defensive stations that had protected Nexus Prime were transformed into something far more powerful than their original design. The human approach was not to destroy what they captured, but to perfect it. Admiral Kyungmin arrived with the second wave of human forces to establish permanent control over the system. She set up her command center in what had been Admiral Kelvin's private quarters, but her first action was to address the conquered population. Citizens of Nexus Prime, her voice carried through every communication device on the planet. Your world now serves humanity. But this does not mean you are our Slaves. The Empire taught you that conquest means suffering. We will show you that it can mean improvement. The transformation of Nexus Prime began immediately. Human medical teams started treating diseases that Imperial medicine had been unable to cure. Human agricultural experts improved food production systems that had been designed only for efficiency, not nutrition. Human educators began teaching skills that would allow the local population to participate in their own governance. But the most important message was broadcast to every Imperial world within communication range. Admiral Kyungmin stood before cameras that transmitted her words across the galaxy, with the transformed defenses of Nexus Prime visible behind her. This world now serves humanity, she announced. Its resources, its knowledge, its strategic value have all been absorbed into our growing civilization. But notice what we have not done. We have not enslaved the population. We have not stripped the world bare. We have not harvested the inhabitants for biological research. The display behind her showed comparative images of Nexus Prime before and after the human conquest. The orbital stations were more powerful, the planetary facilities more efficient, the population healthier and better fed. To the enslaved species watching this broadcast, Kim Min continued, liberation is coming. To the Imperial forces preparing to fight us, understand that resistance is futile, not because we will destroy you, but because we will prove that everything you have built can be improved. She paused, letting her words reach every corner of the galaxy. To the Supreme Council of the Galactic Empire, your strongest border defense has fallen in 4 hours. Your most advanced technology has been absorbed and perfected. Your most loyal officers now work for us willingly because they have seen what we can build together. Her final words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Surrender now and help us build something better. Continue to resist and become fuel for the civilization that will replace you. The Supreme Council chamber erupted in panic as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. In the 3 weeks following the fall of Nexus Prime, 17 more Imperial systems had gone silent. Not destroyed, not bombarded into submission, but simply converted. The human forces moved like a plague across Imperial space, consuming everything in their path and leaving behind something completely different. Chancellor Vorthek slammed his 4 fists against his throne as Admiral Zekther delivered the latest devastating news. Speak plainly, Vorthek demanded. How many ships have we lost? We have not lost ships in the traditional sense, Admiral Zekther replied nervously. The humans capture our vessels intact, then rebuild them using superior technology. Our own fleets are being turned against us. Commander Yeho stood on the bridge of what had once been the Imperial Dreadnought Dominator. The massive vessel now bore human modifications that made it twice as powerful as its original design. Around him, former Imperial officers worked alongside. Human crew members, their loyalty converted not through force but through demonstration of superior methods. Captain Milvox, Yeho called to the former Imperial commander who now served as his second-in-command. What is the status of your crew integration? The tall insectoid Clendery officer clicked his mandibles, and what humans had learned was a sign of satisfaction. Morale remains high, Commander. My people are impressed by human engineering improvements to their quarters and workstations. The food replicators now produce meals that actually taste good instead of mere nutrition paste. This was the reality that the Empire could not understand. Humans did not rule through fear or force, but through demonstrable improvement. Every captured world became more prosperous under human guidance. Every converted ship became more efficient and comfortable for its crew. Every absorbed technology became more effective than its original design. Dr. Yunbi worked in the Neural Interface Laboratory aboard the human command ship, perfecting the technology that allowed direct access to alien knowledge and memories. The volunteers from captured Imperial forces lined up willingly to share their information, not because they were forced to, but because they had seen the benefits that cooperation brought. Subject 847 has provided complete technical specifications for Imperial quantum torpedo systems, she reported to her research team. The design has 3 major flaws that we can correct immediately. Once improved, these weapons will be 40% more effective than the originals. The neural interface technology was humanity's greatest breakthrough in the war. Instead of torturing prisoners for information, humans simply offered to share knowledge freely. Imperial officers who experienced the interface discovered that humans genuinely intended to improve rather than exploit what they captured. This realization converted many former enemies into willing allies. Major Ji-hoon commanded the stealth divisions that had penetrated deep into Imperial space during the 50 years of preparation. His forces had used captured Imperial codes and ship configurations to place agents throughout the Empire's infrastructure. Now, as the open war began, these sleeper agents activated simultaneously. Phantom Base 7 reports successful infiltration of the Mordic shipyards, Ji-hoon announced during the daily intelligence briefing. They have uploaded our improvement protocols to the construction systems. All new ships built there will now incorporate human enhancements. Phantom Base 12 has taken control of the Imperial Communication Network in Sector 9, reported Lieutenant Sui-yong. All military communications in that region now pass through our analysis systems before reaching their intended recipients. The Empire found itself fighting an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. Imperial commanders issued orders that were intercepted and modified by human agents. Supply convoys were redirected to human-controlled worlds where their cargo was improved and sent back to Imperial forces along with subtle propaganda about human intentions. General Dong-yun coordinated the systematic dismantling of the Imperial government from his command center on the captured world of Nexus Prime. The humans had transformed the former Imperial regional capital into a demonstration of what their rule could accomplish. The planet now produced more food, generated more energy, and supported a larger population than it ever had under Imperial control. Phase 7 is complete, he reported to Admiral Kyungmin. We have successfully infiltrated the administrative networks of 43 Imperial worlds. Their own bureaucracy is now working for us without their knowledge. The human strategy was as elegant as it was devastating. Instead of destroying Imperial infrastructure, they absorbed it completely. Every government office that fell under human influence continued to function normally, but now served human interests. Imperial citizens often did not realize their world had been conquered, until human improvements to their daily lives made the change obvious. Lieutenant Naeon led the Psychological Warfare Division, broadcasting carefully crafted messages to enslaved species throughout the galaxy. The broadcasts were not simple propaganda, but detailed demonstrations of what liberation actually looked like under human rule. Today's broadcast reaches an estimated 2 billion Catherian slaves across the Empire, she reported. We are showing them footage of the liberated Catherian colonies where their people now live freely under human protection. The psychological impact was enormous. Enslaved species who had given up hope of freedom began to believe that liberation was possible. Some Imperial worlds experienced slave uprisings that human forces supported with supplies and tactical advice. Other worlds saw mass defections as enslaved populations fled toward human-controlled territory. Captain Minji commanded one of the human assault fleets as it approached the manufacturing world of Titan's Forge. The planet was one of the Empire's most important industrial centers, producing the advanced warships that formed the backbone of Imperial naval power. It was also one of the most heavily defended worlds in Imperial space. Intelligence reports confirm the presence of Admiral Corthan's Third Fleet, reported her tactical officer. 230 ships, including 5 dreadnoughts. They are prepared for a siege? Minji studied the tactical display showing the massive orbital shipyards and defensive platforms surrounding Titan's Forge under normal circumstances. Attacking such a well-defended position would require a fleet several times larger than her force of 70 ships. But these were not normal circumstances. Begin Phase 1, she ordered. Activate the Trojan fleet. Throughout the Titan's Forge system, ships that had appeared to be part of Admiral Corthan's defensive fleet suddenly revealed their true nature. Human forces that had infiltrated the system months earlier using captured Imperial vessel configurations dropped their disguises and began attacking from within the defensive perimeter. "Impossible!" Admiral Corthan shouted as his own ships turned their weapons against his forces. "Those are our vessels. I personally inspected their credentials." "They were your vessels?" Minji replied over the communication channel. "We improved them." The battle for Titan's Forge lasted 8 hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human forces systematically disabled Imperial defenses while protecting the valuable shipyards and manufacturing facilities. When the fighting ended, humanity had captured the most advanced shipbuilding technology in the galaxy, but once again, the real victory came after the battle. Human engineers immediately began analyzing the Imperial shipyard designs and implementing improvements. Within days, the facilities were producing hybrid vessels that combined the best Imperial engineering with superior human innovations. Dr. Sunho led the technical teams that absorbed Imperial manufacturing processes. "These assembly systems are remarkable," he reported. "With minor modifications, we can increase production efficiency by 60% while reducing resource consumption by half." The transformation was swift and complete. Titan's Forge, which had been the Empire's greatest industrial asset, became humanity's most productive manufacturing center. The ships that rolled off its assembly lines were superior to anything either civilization had produced independently. As news of Titan's Forge's fall spread throughout the galaxy, a new reality began to dawn on Imperial leadership. Humanity was not simply winning battles. They were absorbing the Empire piece by piece, taking its greatest strengths and making them even stronger. The humans fought like a virus, but a beneficial one that improved everything it infected. Each conquered world became a demonstration of human superiority. Each captured fleet became more powerful under human command. Each absorbed technology became a weapon against the empire that had created it. The galaxy was learning a terrible truth about humanity. They did not conquer civilizations. They consumed them completely and rebuilt them as something better. The Imperial core worlds had stood unconquered for over 2,000 years. These were the oldest, most heavily defended systems in the galaxy, protected by weapons and shields that had been perfected across millennia of warfare. The Empire's leadership had always believed that even if the border regions fell, the core worlds would remain safe behind their impenetrable defenses. Captain Minji stood on the bridge of her flagship as the human fleet approached the Vardak system, home to the largest Imperial shipyard complex in the galaxy. The massive installations could build 100 warships simultaneously, and their defensive grid included energy barriers that could withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets. Long-range sensors detect 400 Imperial vessels defending the system, reported Lieutenant Borum, including 8 of their new super dreadnoughts that were built specifically to counter our technology. Minji smiled as she studied the tactical display. The Empire had been trying to adapt to human capabilities, but they fundamentally misunderstood what they were facing. They still think this is about bigger weapons and stronger shields. Send the recognition codes. The human fleet transmitted Imperial identification signals that were completely authentic because they had been provided by converted Imperial officers who now served humanity willingly. To the Vardak's defense grid, the approaching vessels appeared to be a returning Imperial fleet carrying supplies and reinforcements. Admiral Thurak, the massive Vorthakian commander of Vardak's station, welcomed what he believed were his own ships with relief. "Finally, reinforcements from the Outer Rim. We need every vessel we can get to hold against the human advance." "Admiral Thurak," Minji replied over the communication channel, "we bring more than reinforcements, we bring evolution." The Imperial vessels that had been escorting the human fleet suddenly revealed their true nature. Ships that Thurak had assumed were loyal Imperial forces began broadcasting human signals and displaying weapon modifications that made them far more powerful than their original designs. "Treachery!" Thurak roared as he realized that half his defensive fleet was now working with the humans. "All loyal vessels open fire on the traitors." The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Imperial ships fought against other Imperial ships that had been improved by human engineering. The converted vessels moved with greater speed and fired with superior accuracy, their hybrid technology outperforming the original Imperial designs in every way. But the real shock came when the human ships demonstrated their latest innovation. Instead of trying to penetrate the Vardak's defensive shields, they simply ignored them. The human vessels phased through the energy barriers as if they were empty space, appearing directly inside the shipyard complex. "Impossible," Admiral Thurak muttered as human forces materialized throughout his installations. "Our shields are impenetrable. Nothing can pass through them." "Your shields are designed to stop matter and energy," Captain Minji explained as her boarding teams began capturing key facilities. "We have learned to temporarily exist in a state that is neither." Another gift from studying your own quantum research programs. The siege of Vardax lasted only 6 hours, but its psychological impact echoed across the galaxy. The Empire's most advanced shipyard, protected by defenses that had never been breached, fell to human forces without significant damage to the facilities themselves. Once again, humanity had captured rather than destroyed, absorbed rather than eliminated. General Dongyun established his new command center in the former admiral's quarters aboard Vardak Station. The massive facility was already being transformed by human engineering teams who worked alongside converted Imperial technicians to improve every system. "Status report," he requested from his staff as they coordinated the absorption of the Vardax complex. "Engineering teams have identified 47 major improvements to the shipyard systems," reported Colonel Hyarin. "Production efficiency can be increased by 80% with modifications that will take less than a week to implement." "Psychological Warfare Division reports mass surrenders across 3 adjacent systems," added Major Taiwan. "Word of Vardax's fall has convinced many Imperial commanders that resistance is futile." But the most important development was taking place in the research laboratories that had been captured intact. Dr. Kyungmin led the teams analyzing Imperial weapons development projects that were decades ahead of anything the Empire had deployed. "They have been working on reality manipulation technology," she reported with excitement. "Weapons that can alter the fundamental laws of physics in localized areas. With our improvements, these could revolutionize space combat." The human approach to conquest continued to prove its effectiveness. Instead of destroying valuable research, they absorbed it and made it better. Instead of executing brilliant scientists, they converted them by demonstrating superior methods. The Empire's greatest intellectual assets became humanity's most powerful weapons. Lieutenant Neon continued her psychological warfare broadcasts, but now she had even more dramatic footage to share with enslaved populations across the galaxy. "Citizens of the galaxy," her voice carried to billions of beings, "witness the liberation of Vardak Station." The broadcast showed Imperial workers and soldiers who had chosen to join humanity rather than fight it. Former enemies now worked alongside humans to improve the captured facilities, their faces showing satisfaction and hope that had been absent under Imperial rule. "To the enslaved species of the galaxy," Neon continued, "your liberation is not a dream. It is happening. System by system, world by world. The empire that has oppressed you for centuries is crumbling, and in its place something better is being built." The psychological impact was devastating to Imperial morale. Across the core worlds, reports came in of slave uprisings, mass defections, and entire populations declaring their allegiance to humanity. Before human forces even arrived, Major Jihun's stealth divisions had spent months infiltrating the core world's communication networks. Now they activated sleeper programs that had been embedded in Imperial computer systems, causing widespread chaos in military coordination. "Imperial Fleet Command has lost contact with 60% of their forces," Jihun reported during the daily intelligence briefing. "Their own communication systems are now working for us." The Empire found itself blind and deaf in its own territory. Orders failed to reach their destinations. Supply convoys were redirected to human forces. and intelligence reports were modified to show false information about human capabilities and intentions. Captain Jin Ho led the assault on the Korthik manufacturing complex, a massive industrial world that produced the Empire's most advanced weapons. The planet was defended by experimental weapons that the Empire hoped would prove effective against human technology. "They are using temporal displacement fields?" reported his tactical officer as strange energy readings appeared on their sensors. "The weapon's fire exists in multiple time streams simultaneously." "Fascinating," Jinho replied as he studied the readings. "Dr. Yumbi will want to examine this technology immediately. Disable their weapons but preserve the equipment intact." The human fleet moved through the temporal distortions with techniques that seemed to violate known physics. Their ships existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to target effectively. When the battle ended, humanity had captured weapons technology that operated outside normal spacetime, but again the real victory came in the aftermath. Human scientists immediately began studying the temporal displacement technology, finding ways to improve its efficiency and stability. Within days, they had developed applications that the original Imperial researchers had never imagined. As the core worlds fell one by one, the Empire's leadership began to understand the true scale of their defeat. Humanity was not simply conquering their territory. They were absorbing the entire Imperial civilization and rebuilding it according to human principles. Every captured world became more prosperous under human rule. Every converted population discovered opportunities that had never existed under the Empire. Every absorbed technology became a tool for further liberation rather than oppression. The galaxy was witnessing the birth of something unprecedented, a civilization that grew stronger by making its enemies stronger, that conquered by improving rather than destroying, that ruled by demonstrating rather than forcing. And at the heart of the Empire, on the throne world of Imperius itself, Emperor Morden prepared for humanity's final assault with the terrible knowledge that he was not just facing defeat, but replacement by something infinitely superior to everything his ancestors had built. Emperor Morden stood in the command center of the Imperial Palace, staring at the holographic display that showed the complete collapse of his 1,000-world empire. In less than 6 months, humanity had consumed 90% of Imperial space, leaving only the throne world of Imperius and a handful of the most loyal core systems still under his control. "Your Majesty," General Vector reported with barely concealed desperation, "the last defensive fleets have assembled around Imperius. We have managed to gather 3 million ships from across the remaining loyal worlds." The Emperor's forearms trembled with rage and fear as he studied the massive fleet that represented the final strength of his empire. 3 million vessels. The largest military force ever assembled in galactic history, all focused on defending the seat of imperial power. "And the human forces?" Morden asked, though he dreaded the answer. Intelligence estimates placed their fleet strength at approximately 200,000 ships, the general replied. "But Your Majesty, these numbers may be misleading. Many of their vessels are former Imperial ships that have been enhanced with their superior technology." The Emperor walked to the great windows that looked out over the Imperial capital city. Billions of beings from hundreds of species lived in the sprawling metropolis below, all of them dependent on the Empire for their survival. If Imperius fell, the heart of galactic civilization would be in human hands. "What news from our allies?" he asked. General Vector's expression grew even more grim. "The hegemony of worlds has declared neutrality. The Free Trade Federation is requesting permission to negotiate separate peace terms with humanity. Even our oldest allies are abandoning us, Your Majesty." Admiral Taeyong commanded the human fleet as it approached the Imperius system for the final battle of the war. Around him, the combined might of humanity's forces spread across space in formations that defied traditional military doctrine. Human ships flew alongside captured Imperial vessels, Cytherian refugee fleets that had joined the liberation cause, and even some Zephyrian crystal ships whose people had been restored to their original forms. Enemy fleet composition confirmed. Reported Commander G1 from the tactical station. 3 million Imperial vessels in defensive formation around Imperius. They have concentrated everything they have left for this final stand. Assessment of their capabilities? Taeyong asked. Dr. Chen Wu, who had been studying Imperial technology throughout the war, provided the analysis. Their weapons are still using standard Imperial designs? No significant improvements or adaptations to counter our technology. They are relying on overwhelming numerical superiority. Taeyong nodded as he studied the tactical display. The Empire's final strategy was exactly what human analysts had predicted. Faced with an enemy they could not understand or adapt to, they had fallen back on the traditional Imperial approach of massive force. All ships prepare for the final engagement, Taeyong announced across the fleet communication network. Remember, our goal is not destruction but absorption. Disable when possible, capture everything of value, and protect the civilian populations. The battle began when the Imperial fleet opened fire at maximum range. Millions of energy beams and projectiles filled the space between the two forces, creating a display of firepower that could be seen from distant star systems. But the human response was not what the Empire expected. Instead of returning fire, immediately, the human fleet activated technology that the Empire had never seen before. Reality itself seemed to bend around the human ships as they phased in and out of normal spacetime. Imperial weapons passed harmlessly through targets that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Impossible, Emperor Morden whispered, as he watched the battle from his command center. Nothing can survive that level of concentrated firepower. But the human fleet was not only surviving, it was advancing steadily through the Imperial barrage. Ships that should have been vaporized by the massive energy weapons continued their approach, protected by technology that operated beyond Imperial understanding. Colonel Yaren led the assault on the orbital defense platforms that protected Imperius itself. These massive installations had been built over centuries to be the ultimate expression of Imperial military engineering. Their shields could withstand direct hits from stellar-class weapons, and their own firepower could crack planets. Beginning infiltration of Platform 7, she reported as her forces used dimensional phasing technology to appear inside the heavily shielded installation. No resistance encountered. The defenders appear to be in shock. The truth was that many Imperial soldiers no longer believed in their cause. Months of psychological warfare broadcasts had shown them what life was like under human rule. They had seen former enemies living better lives as part of humanity's growing civilization. When human forces appeared among them, many Imperial troops simply laid down their weapons. "This is Colonel Yaren of the Human Liberation Force," she announced over the platform's communication system. "We offer the choice that your empire never gave to others. Surrender and join us in building something better, or continue fighting for a system that treats you as expendable resources." Platform after platform fell as Imperial defenders chose cooperation over destruction. The massive installations that had protected the throne world for millennia became part of humanity's forces within hours of the assault beginning. Admiral Taeyong's fleet reached the inner system where Imperius itself waited. The planet was beautiful, covered in cities that housed the greatest achievements of hundreds of civilizations. But it was also a monument to oppression, built on the suffering of countless enslaved species. "Your Majesty," General Vector reported to the Emperor as the human fleet approached the planet, "our defensive grid is failing. Human forces are appearing inside our shield perimeter. They are requesting communication with you directly." Emperor Morden straightened his ceremonial robes and activated the communication system. If he was to face defeat, he would do so with the dignity expected of his station. Admiral Taeyong's face appeared on the display, his expression serious but not hostile. "Emperor Morden, I am Admiral Taeyong of the Human Galactic Fleet. I am authorized to accept your surrender and discuss terms for the transition of power." "Terms?" the Emperor asked with bitter laughter. "What terms can there be?" "You have destroyed My empire scattered my fleets and turned my own subjects against me. What could you possibly offer that would interest me? Life, Taeyong replied simply, and the opportunity to help build something better than what you have lost. The Emperor's forearms gestured in confusion. You would allow me to live? After everything the Empire has done? Emperor Morden, you are not responsible for every crime committed in the Empire's name over 2,000 years, Taeyong explained. But you are responsible for choosing what happens next. You can help us transition your former subjects to a better system, or you can die fighting for something that has already ended. Around the throne world, the last Imperial fleets were laying down their weapons as human forces demonstrated the futility of continued resistance. Ships that tried to fight found their weapons disabled by technology they could not counter. Ships that surrendered were immediately welcomed into humanity's forces and offered improvements to their design and capabilities. What would become of me under your rule? The Emperor asked. You would become a citizen, Taeyong replied, with rights and protections, but also responsibilities. Your knowledge of imperial governance would be valuable in helping us improve the transition for your former subjects. Emperor Morden looked around his command center at the officers and advisors who had served him loyally throughout the war. These beings had followed him into hopeless battle because they believed in the Empire's cause, even as that cause crumbled around them. And my people? My loyal officers and citizens? They would be offered the same choice as everyone else, Taeyong said. Join us and help build a civilization based on improvement rather than exploitation. Your empire conquered through force. We absorbed through demonstration of superior methods. The Emperor walked again to the great windows overlooking his capital city. Below, he could see human ships landing peacefully in the city squares, their crews emerging to offer medical aid and food to the population. There was no looting, no massacre, no destruction of the great monuments and libraries. Very well, Emperor Morden said finally. I surrender the Galactic Empire to humanity. May you build something better than we ever could. 1 year had passed since Admiral Jiwan first delivered humanity's ultimatum to the Galactic Empire. Now she stood in the same chamber where the Supreme Council had once ruled over 1,000 worlds, but everything had changed. The ornate throne room had been transformed into the central command center of the human galactic administration, its ancient symbols of oppression replaced with displays showing the prosperity of liberated worlds. The former imperial throne had been removed entirely. In its place stood a circular platform where representatives from dozens of species worked together as equals. Humans, Catherians, Zephyrians, and even former imperial species like the Vorthakians and Klenderi collaborated on governing the galaxy they all now called home. Status report on the integration process, Admiral Jiwan requested as she reviewed the holographic displays that showed every world in what had once been imperial space. Dr. Sunwoo stepped forward with his analysis. Integration is proceeding ahead of schedule across all sectors. Former imperial worlds are reporting productivity increases of 60 to 90%. More importantly, quality of life indices show improvement in every measurable category. The transformation had been remarkable. Worlds that had been strip-mined for resources under imperial rule were now producing more wealth than ever before while also restoring their natural environments. Populations that had lived in fear of their government now participated actively in local administration. Species that had been enslaved for generations were rediscovering their own cultures, while contributing their unique abilities to the growing galactic civilization. What about the former imperial leadership? Jiwan asked. Most have adapted well to their new roles, reported Commander Dayan from her position at the intelligence station. Citizen Morden has been particularly helpful in designing transition programs for former imperial worlds. His knowledge of galactic governance has proven invaluable. The former emperor had indeed become simply another citizen in humanity's new order. He worked in the Department of Planetary Transition, helping former imperial worlds adapt to their new freedom. His insights into the old system's failures had helped humans avoid repeating the Empire's mistakes while building something better. Captain Minho approached with the daily security briefing. Long-range sensors have detected new signals from beyond the galactic rim, he reported. Analysis suggests at least 3 separate civilizations, possibly more. Initial communication attempts indicate they may be hostile. Admiral Jiwan studied the data with interest rather than concern. The galaxy had learned that humanity's strength came not from their weapons, though those were formidable, but from their ability to absorb and improve everything they encountered. New civilizations meant new opportunities for growth and learning. Composition of the approaching forces? She asked. Mixed fleet configurations suggest a military alliance of some kind, Minho replied. Estimated combined strength is approximately 5 million ships using technology we have not encountered before. General Hyman joined the discussion from her position coordinating the galactic defense networks. Our own fleet strength now numbers over 8 million vessels, including all the former Imperial ships we have improved. But more importantly, we have had a full year to analyze and enhance every technology the Empire possessed. The transformation of the Imperial military had been one of humanity's greatest achievements. Former Imperial officers now commanded ships that were far superior to their original designs. Weapon systems had been improved for efficiency and precision rather than mere destructive power. Defense networks protected civilian populations instead of just military installations. Psychological profiles of the approaching civilizations? Admiral Jiwan asked. Dr. Youngsu consulted his analysis of the intercepted communications. They appear to follow the traditional conquest model. Multiple species united through military alliance rather than genuine cooperation. Their technology suggests they rely on overwhelming force rather than innovation. In other words, Jiwan observed, they are exactly what the Galactic Empire used to be. The irony was not lost on anyone present. Humanity had spent 50 years studying the Empire's weaknesses, learning how such civilizations thought and operated. Now they faced new enemies who used the same flawed approaches that had doomed their predecessors. Colonel Yarn entered the command center with reports from the Outer Rim monitoring stations. The approaching fleets have begun broadcasting demands for our surrender. They claim this galaxy belongs to the hegemony of eternal dominion and that all inhabitants must submit to their rule or face total annihilation. How familiar, Admiral? Jiwan commented with a slight smile. Prepare the standard response. The message that humanity broadcast to the approaching fleets was the same one that had once been sent to the Galactic Empire. But now it carried the weight of proven capability rather than mere warning. Greetings, hegemony of eternal dominion, Admiral Jiwan's voice carried across space to the alien armadas. I am Admiral Jiwan of the Human Galactic Administration. We offer you the same choice we once offered to the Empire that formerly ruled this galaxy. The display behind her showed the transformed worlds of human space. Former Imperial planets now thrived under governance that served their populations rather than exploiting them. Species that had been enemies for centuries now worked together, as partners in building something greater than any of them could achieve alone. Cease your expansion and learn to govern through cooperation rather than conquest, Jiwan continued. Join US in building a civilization based on improvement rather than exploitation. You have 1 standard year to consider this offer. The response from the hegemony was exactly what humanity expected. Laughter, threats, and demands for immediate submission to their superior force. The aliens could not conceive of a single galaxy's population challenging their multi-galactic empire. But humanity was no longer the same species that had hidden in a single star system 50 years ago. They had absorbed the knowledge, technology, and wisdom of hundreds of civilizations. They had learned to fight not just with weapons but with ideas, not just with force but with the promise of something better. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Neiyan from the communication station, we are receiving messages of support from liberated populations across the galaxy. Former slaves are volunteering for military service. Independent worlds are offering resources for the defense effort. This was humanity's greatest weapon. They ruled not through fear but through demonstrated improvement. Every being in the galaxy had seen their lives become better under human governance. They fought not because they were forced to, but because they believed in what humanity was building. Citizen Morden approached Admiral G1 with a datapad containing his analysis of the approaching threat. Admiral, I have studied the hegemonies, communication patterns, and fleet configurations. They make the same mistakes my empire made. They see military conquest as the only path to power. Your recommendations? Juwan asked. Let them come, the former emperor replied. Show them what we learned too late. A civilization that improves everything it touches will always defeat one that only knows how to destroy. As the year progressed, humanity prepared for the next phase of their expansion. Not expansion through conquest, but expansion through absorption. The hegemony would discover what the empire had learned, that humanity did not simply defeat their enemies. They transformed them into something better. Dr. Yumbi had perfected new technologies that combined human innovation with the best discoveries from every species they had encountered. Weapons that disabled rather than destroyed, shields that protected entire star systems, and communication networks that connected every corner of the galaxy in real-time cooperation. The integration is complete, she reported to Admiral Jiwan as they reviewed the final preparations. We are no longer just humanity or just the former empire. We have become something new. Admiral Jiwan looked out through the great windows of the command center at the thriving galactic civilization that stretched to every corner of known space. Ships from dozens of species moved peacefully through space lanes that had once carried only Imperial warships. Trade flowed freely between worlds that had once been enemies. Knowledge was shared openly among peoples who had once been kept in ignorance. Signal all sectors, she commanded. Transmit the final warning to the hegemony of eternal dominion. Her words echoed across the galaxy, carried by communication networks that reached every inhabited world. We are humanity, but we are more than humanity. We have become the sum of every civilization we have encountered, every species we have liberated, every world we have improved. We conquer not to destroy, but to transform. We devour not to consume, but to perfect. We offer you the same choice we once offered your predecessors. Join us willingly and help build something greater, or resist and become the foundation upon which we build it anyway. The message concluded with humanity's promise, now proven by the transformation of an entire galaxy. We conquer, we devour, we become. Choose wisely.